Good evening. How are you? I'm getting out a little late today, and but it is nice out. First of all, from Thomas Jefferson, the temperature is 86 degrees. Why couldn't it do that the last week I wanted to go swimming before Labor Day? The humidity is 43%, so it's a little more comfortable because of that, and the winds are at a rocking 4.9 miles an hour. Thank you, Thomas Jefferson. For those of you who aren't familiar, this is how I pay homage to one of our founders, because he's very interested in keeping track of the weather on a daily basis himself. So this is just an honorarium to a historic figure. He's not usually with me. This is a good week for those of us who believe in a republic, who believe in the right to vote, who believe in equal justice before law. And what better place could that happen than in the courts of the United States? And I'll talk about how these victories lead us to what may be the greatest constitutional conflict in the history of the Republic. But first, let's talk about the key words of the week. Repeated time and again this past week, including today, are the words unconstitutional and unlawful. And these words are being referred in connection with Trump's conduct in so many ways. But I'm just going to identify the cases so you have some sense that belief in the Republic is not futile, that there are judges who give a damn, who remember what happened without regard to party or who appointed them. That is the key to a democracy, that the law is something that can be trusted because it makes sense and it follows past law. And if that law is not good, then there's an explanation why that law is not good. It can be amended and changed, but that's not how we've been working. It's been the grab whatever the hell I want kind of regime that Trump supports and persists in presenting to the people as he gets brutal more and more each day. So, is this a pivot to the Republic and from the drift to a dictatorship? And I think the answer is yes, because we have had vectors, meaning force in a certain direction over the last several weeks in small and large ways, and this week is the largest. And so what it does is it indicates where we may end up. But you have to be familiar with the fact that just because something happened before or seems to be happening in your direction, that's the end of it. That's not, as we know. Life is about suspense, both individually, politically, internationally. So the first instance of a case that's significant is the fact that the courts blocked the use of the Wartime Alien Enemies Act. That was the BS argument that they were making, that somehow or other people coming here were really incoming troops on behalf of a foreign nation with whom we didn't have any war requirements for the use of that Alien Enemies Act. Going back to John Adams, who he preferred that act, but he was much more inclined to use the alien sedition laws instead. The second decision is the federal deployment of the National Guard, blocked by the courts. Big decision. Another one is the courts canceled the freezing of the $2 billion that was being withheld from Harvard. Terrific. That's three, and there's more. Blocked the termination of protected legal status for the hundreds of thousands of Haitians and Venezuelans. So, what are we to make of this? The question that this poses, because we can expect all of these to be appealed by, in my mind, people with minimal ethical responsibility, who have betrayed their oath of office as lawyers, and still they're going to do this because when a dictator wants something, they jump. The question is just how high. And so, will the Supreme Court blink when it gets to them? What will they do? Now, integrity for a con is once bought, do you stay bought? Do you think that's too far a criticism of the Supreme Court? No, I don't. We have the data points, there's no question about it. But the question remains, does Roberts care to resume law and precedent as the guiding principles, or is it going to be an exhibition of raw power to prevail before us? That's an open question. I do not begin with a hope or belief that the Supreme Court will do the right thing. But I do think there's a point that every bully is a coward, and the Supreme Court is a bully. It's a rough political machine that concealed as much as possible their real belief in what they would do on the court, and they've been getting away with it. Well, we'll find out how they feel after all these courts with all these decisions are leaning against having a dictatorship. The White House poo-poos the decision like they do everything. But no one can swallow their swill. Correct. No one can do that. Now, is this the moment we start to get it right? And when I say a moment, consider I'm talking about over this past week. So these are steps. The legislature and all those people in Congress, including all those Democrats, sit on their hands and boo-hoo, but don't do a damn thing except fill the air with their hot breath. But the courts, the people who have gone to the courts, the people who have gone to the streets, the people that have gone to the papers, gone to political parties and supported in elections, they're tilting us in the right direction. But the end is still in suspense. The thing about Trump is, thinking about him going back to, I was at Fordham before I went to Columbia undergraduate, and at Fordham, he was supposedly a student and we should have been in the same class. I don't know anybody who ever saw him on campus. And this sort of popped into my head. Barron hasn't been seen at NYU lately. So another generation of stupid Trump family matters relying on defective DNA to tell us and to lead what they want, which is backward, aboriginal, and against the very principles that define our nation. And, Trump may figure that he can create a lie to justify the use of war powers. And the latest example, of course, is destroying a boat with 11 people on board and trying to claim that this small boat was an incursion of some massive drug production. And the ship that they're talking about, when I say ship, rowboat, extended rowboat, it looks like, probably had a range of only 100 miles. Where were they going? They'd be such a threat. And who knows what was in that boat? Because they decided to destroy it, because they didn't want evidence of what it really was. Well, what happens when you play with fire? Venezuelan fighters flew over the U.S. Navy ships. That tells you what happens when you take a saber and rattle it, but don't use it. Or know how to use it. Or have a justification for using it. We have a man playing with the future of the world. And he doesn't seem to care if he destroys it in the process. That's not acceptable. That this has been tolerated is itself intolerable. And so, in the days ahead, when people make any indication that they think this guy is worth their trust, correct them. Do it as politely as possible. Argue a little bit. This nation depends on our message. The networks can't be relied on to tell the story. We see things happening and they don't get reported in the, quote, real news. We have cowardly chieftains and these news organizations who are not giving us the full and necessary truth. And we are entitled to that. And they got to stop saying on the one hand and the other hand. There's no blending of what's right and wrong here. It's either right or wrong. And I'm not talking platonic, I'm talking real life, real world, how we're damaged and hurt by people like Trump and the bizarre clown collection he's surrounded around him who'll kiss his ass in Macy's window if you ask them. So, that's what I got to say. And so I say, have a good evening. Saying goodbye to you from the Cathedral of Trees. We're going to lose their foliage pretty soon. Bye-bye.